Welcome back and moving on to our first segment for today. As we mentioned in the beginning, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli headed to Alexandria to inspect some of the developments taking place over there and to inaugurate some of the important projects. Well, over the phone, we have Mr. Ihab Kamel, our tourism expert. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir. One of the important actually developments that took place over there in Alexandria was the developments that took place in the Greco-Roman Museum. Could you tell us more about the importance of this museum and what is exactly happening there?
Well, let's first look at the Greco-Roman Museum. We will see that it's the only Greco-Roman museum that we've got in Egypt. And of course, choosing Alexandria as a place for this museum because of the identity of Alexandria as a Greco-Roman city or a Greek city or a Greek polis that was founded in Egypt by Alexander the Great. Then it was completed by Ptolemy I. So Alexandria is considered to be the Greco-Roman capital or the capital of Egypt during the Greek time. So it was expected that we would find lots of pieces of antiquities in Alexandria. These pieces of antiquities needed a decent place for exhibition, especially that you will find that all the digs in Alexandria had revealed unique pieces of antiquities dating back to the Ptolemaic period and the Roman period. Also, some of the sites in Alexandria are considered to be unique and nothing like it, especially the ancient Greek burials that dated back to the early Ptolemaic period, like the tombs of Shotbi, where we had found the early examples of the Greek burials, where we found the urns that contained the ashes of the Greek bodies that were buried over there in the classical Greek way. So it was something very important that Alexandria would have a museum that would reflect its archaeological identity. As a matter of fact, this museum is also considered to be one of the very beautiful buildings in Alexandria that shows the Alexandrian historical identity, because it's built on the Greco-Roman style, and it's a masterpiece of architecture, actually. As a matter of fact, this museum it was closed for too long, and it had one of the very nice exhibitions, especially that this museum is not only hosting Greco-Roman artifacts, but it's hosting as well some ancient Egyptian artifacts, and what is most important, it's hosting pieces that is dating back to the Coptic period, especially that it has got very important collection from the portraits of Fayum, also ancient Egyptian pieces, and what is really important as well, the famous imperial statues, the statues that shows the Roman emperors like Marcus Aurelius, who has a magnificent statue over there, as well as a very important collection of Greek statues called the Tanagra. The Tanagra statues, they are small statues. They show how did the people look like, how did they dress, how their hairstyle was during the Greek period. And there isn't one museum in Egypt that has such a big collection for the Tanagra except the Greco-Roman Museum. Maybe we've got some in some other museums, like the Civilization Museum, but the collection in the Greco-Roman Museum is amazing. And you look at these statues, and you can get a clear picture. How did the ancient Greeks look like? How were they dressed? It shows you a lot about their social life. It shows a lot about the woman's status in the ancient Greek community. So this is a very unique collection, plus a very unique collection of amphoras, the Greek jars. And it's one of the very important collections of Greek amphoras worldwide. What's also worth mentioning that nowadays they added a very important collection, the collection of the sunken antiquities that were discovered during the underwater excavation, either by Jean-Yves Empereur or Franck Gaudieu. And some of them had been exhibited in the Greco-Roman Museum. The Greco-Roman Museum is not a small museum. It's hosting almost 40,000 pieces of antiquities. At least 20,000 of them are under exhibition. If you would know that the Egyptian Museum itself, which is like the National Museum, is hosting 100,000 pieces of antiquities, so you can imagine how important this museum is. Plus that the building itself, it's a masterpiece of architecture. It's part of Alexandria's architectural heritage, especially that it's one of the few monuments that exists that were designed by the famous Austrian architect Dietrich Witten himself.
Sir, talking about Alexandria, just as you mentioned, usually those who are interested to find out more about the history of the Greco-Roman, there are many beautiful sites actually in Alexandria that can tell us more about this. So now we can say that when they inaugurated or made more developments regarding this museum as inspected by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, it is now one of the important places to start with in Alexandria, telling us more about the Greco-Roman history in Egypt, right?
Well, many people think that the first Greek polis in Egypt dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, when he had actually founded Alexandria, and he was fascinated by the location. As a matter of fact, that's not the case. The first Greek polis, or the Greek city, or the classical polis of ancient Greece, it was founded during the 26th dynasty, during the time of King Psamaticus, and it was called Naucratis. And it's in Western Delta. It's located in Western Delta, and many excavations took place there. And this was established by the Greek mercenaries who had worked in the Egyptian army during the time of King Psamaticus, during the time of the 26th dynasty. As a matter of fact, Alexandria itself, we cannot say that it was the first polis, but we can say that it was the only or the first city that was founded by Alexander the Great himself. Alexander the Great himself, he is like a legendary character in history. So when he came to Egypt, he was actually fascinated by the location of a small fisherman's village that was that was called Rakotis. The name is driven from the ancient Egyptian word Ra Ketet. It was a fisherman's village that used to worship the god Ra in over there, and it was facing an island that was called the island of Pharos. What happened was, because of this fascination by the location by Alexander the Great, he decided to establish a city that would carry his name, like many other cities that carried his name worldwide. So he extended a dike that was called the Hepta Stadium. Hepta, that's the Greek number 7. Stadium, that was a unit of measurement. That was like a dike that had extended, linking between the island and the mainland and the village of Rakotis, and that's how Alexandria started. Unfortunately, Alexander died before he completed Alexandria, and the work was resumed, and it was completed by King Ptolemy the First, as you know, because after the death of Alexander the Great, his empire was divided among his generals, and Egypt became of the share of his general Ptolemy, who had completed the work by building a number of districts, and he had given this job to a famous Greek architect. His name was Dinocrates, who had designed Alexandria like the cities, the Greek cities, by dividing it into a number of districts. He started by the royal district that had hosted the tomb of Alexander the Great, that was called the Brachyon, and that contained the Alexandrian library. Also, he had divided Alexandria into a number of districts, as I said, Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta, a district for the royalty of the Ptolemaic period, of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and actually this had hosted the most important buildings in Alexandria, the famous museum, which was a great university, and it became the most important educational foundation in the Mediterranean and in the ancient world, as well as the library of Alexandria, the royal palace, the royal cemetery, and this district was called the Brachyon. Then he had a district for the nobles, and the Egyptians had lived in the Delta district, and also there was another district where the Jewish population of Alexandria had lived, and they all actually had lived in harmony. But this was not really the bigger challenge for the Ptolemies. The Ptolemies came with a different culture, and they knew that they were going to stay, so they had to blend in Egypt, and they had to blend the Egyptians with the Greeks. So the first thing they did was the invention of a new cult, which was called the cult of Serapis. And the cult of Serapis, the center of this cult was in Alexandria. And as a matter of fact, they had chosen a form for the god Horus, for one of the Egyptian gods, and they blended it with the god Zeus, the Greek god, and they called that cult Serapis, to the extent that they had made a triad for Alexandria. This god Serapis, the new god, was married to the goddess Isis, and they had the god Horus as a son. So they actually mixed between the Osiris cult and the cult of Zeus, forming Serapis, who married Isis. And we have lots of interesting statues for Horus the child, their son, or Harpocrates, as he was called in the Greek-Roman period, and they are made out of marble, and they are exhibited in the Greek-Roman Museum of Alexandria. Actually, when you look at the statues of Isis, you will see the Greek influence, or the mixture between the Greek and the Egyptian art. The emblems of Isis on her head, the ancient Egyptian emblems, but Isis looks like a Greek lady dressed in Greek costumes, and that's how they had started, like making the Greeks and the Egyptians blend together, forming a very interesting mixture for Alexandria. We cannot also forget that Alexandria became the cultural and the educational capital of the ancient world during the Ptolemaic period, to the extent that even in the Christian period, Alexandria became the center of spreading Christianity, not only in Egypt, but in all of North Africa, because when St. Mark came to Egypt, he started preaching first in Alexandria, then he went from there. After spreading Christianity, he started heading west to what was known at that time to the Great Seven Western Cities, which is Libya at the moment now, and from there he started spreading Christianity all over the North African coast, and then he returned back to Alexandria to be assassinated there, and his remains are located on the St. Mark Cathedral in Alexandria. So Alexandria is not only a very important city was not a very important city during the time of the Ptolemies, but also during the Christian period, because the Church of Alexandria is one of the most ancient 5 churches in the whole world, and actually this is as stated in the holy Synaxar of the Coptic Church.
Right,
Actually,
Mr.
I
Ihab
consider.
Kamel, our tourism expert, thank you very much for joining us. Right now, moving on to a quick break, then we'll be back with more on the Breakfast Show.